welcome back to Through the Eyes of Survivors. You know, there's a woman listening right now who thinks she's losing her mind. I can feel that way consistently on a daily basis sometimes. But she used to be sharp and organized, quick, capable. I've heard women talk about this all the time. And now she walks into a room, forgets why she's there, and she rereads the same text 3 or 4 times and still can't absorb it. Starts sentences, can't finish them, forgets appointments, misplaces keys, lose track of time. And the worst part, she thinks it's her fault. She thinks she may be weak or something's wrong with her. Maybe she's not as smart as she used to be, is what she's thinking in her head, or maybe just too emotional. Maybe he was right, because it's triggering those kind of responses in our head from what we heard from our trauma, because that's what trauma does. Domestic violence doesn't just bruise the skin, it rewires your brain, and it clouds your memory, and it fractures your confidence and how you feel about yourself. It creates something survivors can call brain fog, and that can feel pretty heavy and disorienting at times, and nothing feels clear, and your thoughts don't feel like they belong to you anymore. So, and when you're inside abuse, confusion becomes the norm, and doubting yourself, second guessing your memory, questioning whether or not you're perceiving things correctly. You stop trusting your instincts, and that's not accidental. So tonight we're not talking about visible injuries. We're talking about the invisible neurological impact of domestic violence. We're going to talk about why survivors forget, why they struggle to focus, and why decisions may feel impossible. And why sometimes that clarity disappears for us. More importantly, why it doesn't mean that you are not broken. I mean, you're not broken. And if you ever wondered, why can't I think clearly anymore? But you feel embarrassed about how forgetful you've become during or after abuse, this conversation is definitely for you. Um, it's trauma. And tonight we're pulling the fog back. So this is Through the Eyes of Survivors.
Important notice: the following content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. All discussions are based on personal opinions and experiences. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to a local support organization.
Wonderful. We are back. Before we get into our topic, I want to plug our great affiliates real quick. We want to take a quick moment to talk about something that can really empower you on your journey towards safety and healing. It's called Truth Finder, which is a simple tool that helps you uncover public records and background information about the people you may encounter in your life, whether you're reconnecting with someone from your past or just want to ensure the people around you are trustworthy. Truth Finder provides you with information you need to make informed decisions. And here at Through the Eyes of Survivors, we're all about creating safe spaces and giving survivors the tools they need to reclaim their power. So that's why we're excited to share Truth Finder with you. It's a tool that helps you take control of your own security and peace of mind. Try it out and support our podcast by visiting the link in the description and comments, and we thank you for supporting our mission there. Also, Opus Clips, an AI-driven platform helping us turn powerful podcast moments into short, impactful clips. From survivor stories to hard truths, Opus Clip helps us amplify voices and spread awareness across every platform. So if you want to turn your content into scroll-stopping reels or shorts, try using Opus Clips with our special link. And lastly, our self-defense keychain store. We're proud to have an affiliate with them through the Eyes of Survivors affiliate. It's a woman and minority-owned business that provides discreet stylish self-defense tools that women can use. So check out their website again in our comments or description, and put in break the silence to receive your 10% off during your purchase. So I want to tonight introduce a guest who is who understands this topic from both sides, lived experience and professional expertise. So we have Cerise. Is that correct? Am I saying it correct?
Yes.
Yes. Cerise Woodard. She is a survivor of domestic violence, a forensic nurse, a speaker, and advocate dedicated to helping survivors and communities understand the often unseen dynamics of abuse. She speaks openly about psychological and emotional abuse, about what she calls the fog that keeps survivors trapped, that confusing mental space where nothing feels clear and instincts feel dulled. So, through her advocacy and writing, she ensures survivors to feel seen and validated and empowered to trust themselves again. So, we welcome you. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for being in this fight.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, before we get into brain fog and that fog and
Mhm,
that neurological science of that trauma, can
mhm.
you take us back to your story for a moment? What were the dynamics of abuse you were navigating, and what did that season of life kind of look like for you?
That season of life, look, it was most of my life. Let me say that.
Mhm.
So it probably started, a lot of survivors think, how did I even get here? And I've done a lot of unpacking through therapy to realize it started probably in childhood, just being in a controlling household and being used to being controlled and being every choice I made being questioned or disagreed with because someone else knows better type situation, right? So fast forward to adulthood, I get in a relationship as a young adult, actually, a very young adult. Um, with an older gentleman, which of course I loved it. Like an older gentleman, he's attracted to me, all the compliments, all the love bombing, all of that, right?
Right.
So that's how it started. The love bombing, the attachment through the love bombing phase. And I was in that relationship about 30 years. I mean, it was a very long time and off and on. The marriage part of it was, I can't even remember. I try not to even think about it anymore. It had to be 20 years though.
Right.
And so it's a gradual process, right? Well,
Mhm.
the love bombing is powerful and all of a sudden,
Right.
but the love bombing is when their attachment is secured, and then you're always trying to fight to get back to that good feeling. So that's where mine started in young adulthood through most of my adulthood. And like I said, I was in my marriage for a long time. And another thing some survivors deal with after the fact is, why did I stay so long?
Right.
Like, why? And then you have that shame and guilt of, why did I stay so long? But that's also where the fault comes in because the is what keeps you so long, right? It's a weird dynamic.
Yes, absolutely. So, from your experience, what did that brain fog look like in your real life?
In my real life, it looked like just putting one foot in front of the other every day,
Mhm.
just trying to make it through the day, where you have, um, you're reading the room. Like, what is the mood today? Is it a good mood? Is it not a good mood? Never being concerned necessarily with myself and my needs because I'm so busy worried about the my partner and their mood. And so the memory loss, the forgetfulness, the again, just going through life, just trying to survive. It's that survival mode where you don't have time to make or the ability to make really complex decisions because you're putting all of your energy into maintaining something else. And then I had a daughter. So between making sure she had what she needed and then trying to make sure my partner had all of his requests, there's nothing else that my brain can compute and calculate and deal with. That's it. Like that was the limit to my ability to function. I was a nurse, so don't get me wrong. So okay, so career, family, barely maintained the house. Like, you had to prioritize what's the most important things. And one was taking care of my daughter. She became a priority. And then trying to keep the temperature in the house at a normal level, which was impossible.
No, I get what you're saying because you get so fixated and focused on like the light ahead that you've got your pinpointing
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
that you're not seeing the bigger picture around you.
And
And
it's so interesting because events happened, of course, events I'm at, of course, and I have conversations with people now, and they're like, "Remember such and such happened?" No, I don't. Was I there? Oh, okay. Thanks for telling me I was there. Because if you didn't tell me, I would not remember anything about that person, that event, because I was just trying to survive. And I trust me, in my friend group, I'm the person who has all the pictures. And
right.
thank God for pictures because I would remember nothing, no events. So if I don't have a picture of it, it didn't happen in my mind.
No, absolutely. I get what you're saying. So, when did you first realize something was cognitively different?
I realized that as far as like this just isn't right. Like I shouldn't be living like this. Oh, my daughter is 22 now. So she was in elementary school. Like it was early on. It was a long time ago when I realized something was wrong.
Mhm.
But there's that cognitive dissonance, right? There's that gaslighting going on. So yes, I'm questioning things, but I'm trying to be a good wife.
Mhm.
I'm trying to meet you know, the vows, the standards of being a good wife. So knowing something is wrong and truly knowing it's wrong is different because it's always like, okay, this is not working out. What do I need to do to make it better?
Right.
Right. So there were so many days of tears and crying, like, I can't deal with this. I can't keep going through this. And another piece for me, my story is the religious side of it.
Right.
So religion kept me in it longer than I should have been also because forgive, right? Forgive 70 times seven. Um,
Yes.
also, the turn the other cheek. Also, oh, pray for him. All of that kind of stuff. But I knew things weren't right. I remember being in church in the bathroom, crying my eyes out because I was like, I can't make it into heaven married to him. There's just no way.
Mhm.
So I had the cognitive dissonance going on. And that's what it is. It's cognitive dissonance. Your mind feels something's wrong, but the other side of you is like, well, this is just how it has to be, or I could try to make it better. And that's the whole point of the whole concept of cognitive dissonance, which equals fog. Like you're like, okay, I just am going to keep going. Would you say pinpoint that light? I'm going to keep moving towards this, keep moving towards that light that you never reach. But okay.
Yes. Did it make you question your intelligence during those moments? And how did it?
Not necessarily my intelligence. You know, one part of my story is I never lost connection to those I was close to,
Mhm.
like family and friends, even though there were an innumerable amount of times where, he tried to disrupt that connection. But I never let that happen. So I still had friends around me. They didn't know what was going on in my life, of course, but I had that grounding where I didn't think I wasn't just dumb or not intelligent anymore. I
Right.
questioned my reality, you know. You start, I mean, back then it wasn't screenshots on a phone like you could do now. You could
Yeah.
screenshot the messages, but emails, I'm like printing them out. Like, am I crazy? Like, is this? That's not how that went. Like, I'm being accused of something I didn't do or say, and or you have one argument and all the list of things I need to do and change to get better. Okay, I'm writing down lists of things I need to do and get better, and then the next week it's a different list. And so you're, so my reality was completely distorted, and I just couldn't keep up with that.
Right. I think gaslighting just compounds it. I know I personally, I see myself as a very intelligent person. And I personally began to question that because of the gaslighting, and it spiraled me for quite some time, even after I left the relationship, as to whether or not it really was truly as smart as I
Hmm.
thought I was, and my family was telling me I was. And it compounded it in a way for me that it actually disrupted my life for a time period,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I was constantly having to question whether or not certain things were real, or if my memory was betraying me, right? So,
Right. Yeah. Your memory is like, did that happen or did it not happen?
yes.
I've asked that 1,000 times.
Yes. So it still becomes like a very huge trigger for me even now, because I'm like, I'm probably about 25 years
Mhm.
divorced from that man, and I can still be like very triggered in some ways of like, okay, no, I know that's what I said, and so I
Mhm.
don't like to question that. And at the same
It
time, I'm starting to get elderly, believe it or not. I'm in my 50s.
you don't look a day over 25, so you're
Thank
good.
you. But, I have noticed there's some things that with my little granddaughters that I'm like, yeah, mama don't remember saying
Mhm.
or doing that. And
I mean, it's still that way though. It's
mhm,
because as a survivor, yes, healing is possible and getting out of the fog, of course, is possible, but your brain, I I don't have scientific proof of this, but your brain has been altered, especially depending on how long the abuse has gone on. And so your brain will continue to filter out things to for your safety, right? So
right.
I think I still have memory challenges as far as if it's too much input. Like I'm just not going to remember everything. I am definitely going to use my calendar, my reminders, my notifications, because I'm just not going to remember everything. And I just know that's just the bandwidth of my brain right now.
I think some of it has to do with sensory overload. And when you're in
Hmm.
a state of trauma and constantly survival mode and stuff, you're overly, you definitely have a sensory overload going on all the time.
Right. And
So,
the fog is obviously not a place someone wants to be or should be. It's
right,
also, of course, not a goal, right? However, it is a protective mechanism. Our bodies are extremely well made and we have a lot of protective mechanisms. And so, like you just said, as sensory overload, you go into the fog because it's a sensory overload and you're in survival mode. So you narrow down things to the most important things at that time. So it is protective because there's no way I could have processed anything else along with the emotional abuse I was going through. I would have been insane.
right.
I would have been insane. So the fog is protective. It's just, trying to wake people up to it and, shake up that awakening in their mind. Like, this really isn't how I should be living, because with the fog, it has a protective mechanism, but it's also keeping you from your purpose in life.
Right. So from a clinical perspective, what
Mhm.
is actually like neurologically happening?
I don't have, I should have written this down because, because clinically, we have a lot of stress hormones, and I forget the name of the different stresses.
Like
Yes,
cortisol
the
rising.
cortisol is your
I
stress.
monitor my cortisol all the
Right.
time.
Yes, I monitor my cortisol levels too because mine were sky high. They've come down. I still not normal, but they've come down. And having your cortisol levels that high constantly, it causes damage. Now again, your memory, your thought processes, but organs in your body, can be negatively impacted, because the cortisol was given to us again as a protective factor, but not to be consistently engaged through like 24/7. This, that goes back to um the, what did they call it, the caveman days, when they were literally fight or flight because they had to go hunt and kill and get their food, right? They needed cortisol for all of that to stay alive. But those were short bursts. And when you're living in an abusive relationship, it's consistent. It's all day, it's every day. And so that cortisol level goes high. My sister's in the comments. I saw her.
Oh, wonderful.
Because she may be able to help me remember the words, because there's two other hormones that impact the brain that,
Well, yeah,
it creates the fight and flight, those freeze
no,
responses of abuse victims. If you hear about someone being sexually assaulted, they don't fight; they just lay there. That's that freeze, and that's a hormone in that surges in our brain when we're being abused. So you have all of these hormones that were given to us for good
right.
that are now being triggered consistently in an abusive relationship. And when you have all of those hormones surging and completely out of control all the time, the mapping of your brain is definitely changed. And that's how you have PTSD, the chronic PTSD, because of those brain changes through abuse. It's also why studies show that a pregnant woman, the baby is impacted.
Yes.
So the baby is already impacted before the baby is born.
Oh, yeah, I believe that because I could definitely tell, and I'm sure many other people had that. Like my first pregnancy, during my first pregnancy, there wasn't any abuse to when I was married to him. The abuse started after my pregnancy ended with him,
Mhm.
but it carried over through the second pregnancy, and there was a definite difference between the two children.
Mhm.
And the way they responded to things and how they handled things, and I chalk that up to because the second child was experiencing all that emotional trauma and abuse with me.
Mhm.
My first child didn't have that experience while I was pregnant.
Right. Right.
You could definitely tell a difference.
Yes, I ended up having my daughter because I only birthed one child, and I say that because I have bonus children through the marriage that I still am in communication with and everything. But the one child I had, I ended up having her I ended up going on bed rest and
Mhm.
having her 3 weeks early. Then when she was 3 or 4, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. I look back on that situation and I know it's completely due to my emotional abuse, and those consistently high cortisol levels and the consistently being in fight or flight mode. I 100% know that's what caused me to develop an autoimmune condition.
Right. And so many of us have autoimmune diseases, other
Hmm.
things. It affects so many different parts of your body. I have met so many survivors who it is so funny when you get to talking to them. They have lost like things like I had to have a hysterectomy. I had to have
Mm.
my gallbladder removed. I had to, and that is so common. And it just, to me, it was like, aha, why do we all have that in common? So many of us, not all of us, but a lot.
A lot of us, right?
Yes.
You, because that physical, again, those hormones surging through your body at astronomical levels all the time is damaging all parts of your body.
Right.
So yes, not uncommon for survivors to have tons of medical issues. I was bordering on diabetes. I There's a marker for your heart health, and a predictive marker. Like if you'll have a heart attack, that level was high. Like I had to do a lot of revamping of my lifestyle, physically, like eating and all of that stuff, just to help with my healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Boy, the comments are just blowing up today. So before we hit the mid-roll break, let's check out some. But
Someone asked, I saw a comment, someone asked how my relationship is with my daughter.
yes.
Well, I'm very thankful. My relationship is wonderful with my daughter. It's like I mean, she's a young adult now, so we're best friends now. At the time, again, what I said, I put all my energy and effort into her and then trying to keep him happy. I I did a lot for her to try to shield her from what was going on. Now, of course, she has her own issues from growing up in that environment. But once I came out of my fog and I woke up and I had the support and language of what I was really dealing with, she was graduating high school at that time. So she was age appropriate where I could pull back the veil. I'm done covering for his actions. He is who he is. I'm not going to cover it up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or downplay it. So she was there. So she was young and of course didn't have the language about what was going on. But from my communication with her, once I decided to leave, she understood and it wasn't foreign to her again because she was there when it would be 2 weeks of silent treatment, there no speaking to me at all, and then 3 a.m. when I have to go to work at 7 a.m. coming and waking me up yelling and screaming because he an explanation is needed for me not speaking to him. So so it I think she appreciates how much I tried to shield her
Mm-hmm.
from it. And she has a lot of great core memories from her childhood, holidays and birthdays. I always made sure she was good. So we have a great relationship.
That's wonderful. I know I have a great one with my daughter too. Here's your, is that your sister?
That's my sister. But it's still another one though. There's
Mhm.
which I should know. See, this is that brain fog.
Yes.
I, because I am a forensic nurse, so we deal with, if I'm talking to a survivor who I'm doing an exam on, like we know the hormones that cause the fight, flight, and the different responses from the brain.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Oh, we're still getting lots of comments.
Somebody said the clean eating and herbal intervention. Yes,
Yes.
you have to do that to reset um, your hormones because it's so.
So what would you say should be the first step for someone considering leaving an abusive situation?
What I always tell people, I do a lot of trainings on domestic violence and prevention and intervention. I always say call a domestic hotline to create a safety plan.
Yes.
That's the very first step. They're experts, especially the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They're experts. You can create a safety plan. I think even on their websites, you're able to create a safety plan on the website. But that will be the first step because you have to that's the time that's most dangerous for a person to leave. Most dangerous for a person in an abusive relationship is when they want to leave. So you have to get together a safety plan. I recommend knowing where you're able to go. If you have family or friends that you're able to go to, I recommend once you actually leave, getting a protective order. But prior to that, um, knowing where you're going to go,
Yes.
packing your essentials and stowing them away. When the day that what was it? I was blessed that when I decided to leave, he was invited to go on a trip. And, when he asked me, should I go? I was like, yes, please. Because I'm packing and storing my stuff away at that time. So, packing a small bag, not leaving it in the house where they could see it. I packed a small bag, took it to my mother's house, emergency and important documents. I don't want to necessarily go through the list of the important documents, but everything, that you need as far as identification, insurance, and things like that. Pack all of that with clothes and take it to someone else's house. Some people have a safety plan and all of that in place, but they are still trying to stay and work out the relationship, but they have it packed somewhere just in case. Like, okay, I have to run right now.
Right.
Um, and once that happens, if you actually leave, then I would do the protective order, and then if you're married, start divorce proceedings and things like that. And of course, we have to have therapy. I think that's one of the top things when you're planning to leave also.
Definitely. And the moderator will put into the comments. We also have a support line if you need help safety planning and stuff
Awesome.
on our website as well. So we'll put that in there. We're going to take our mid-roll break real quick. Share a video with you about volunteering here at Break the Silence. We definitely could use some really great volunteers. It talks about some of the different positions and stuff, and we will be right back in a moment.
At BTSADV, every survivor deserves to feel seen, supported, and safe. But we can't do this work alone. When you volunteer with BTSADV, you're not just giving your time, you're giving hope. Hope to survivors rebuilding their lives. Hope to children who've lost a parent to domestic violence. Hope to families healing after trauma. We have volunteer opportunities for every skill set. Support line volunteers who answer calls with compassion. Graphics creators who build our educational posts and campaigns. Editors who turn podcasts into powerful short-form videos. Social engagement volunteers who help keep our pages safe. Podcast moderators who guide conversation and protect survivors live. Website editors who help publish survivor stories and resources. And video reel creators who bring awareness to millions. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need special degrees. You just need a willingness to show up with courage and empathy. We train you. We support you. We walk with you every step of the way. If you've ever wanted to make a difference, if you've ever said, I wish I could help, this is your moment. Join our volunteer team. Stand with survivors. Be part of something life-changing. BTS ADV, where survivors find connection, support, and hope. At BTS.
All right, we're back. So we're back with Cerise, and we're talking about the brain fog.
Brain fog.
Fog that survivors can experience sometimes. So, like, can repeated psychological manipulation create this disassociation? We've been talking about that, and I'd like to go into that more detail.
Yes. So the repeated psychological abuse that happens with emotional abuse is definitely going to rewire the brain. And I was Googling the information while You were on break. So our limbic system, the amygdala, is a part of the brain. Like that's the part. That's what I couldn't. So it wasn't a hormone. So my sister was right about the cortisol, adrenaline.
Yes.
Yes, I knew that. I thought it was another hormone, but it was the amygdala part of the brain that is impacted by stress, and that's that part that we start um, to transform, remap through the consistent, ongoing stress and of emotional abuse. Yes, and I feel like I forgot part of your question.
I just wanted to talk about how that constant manipulation creates
Okay.
association. Yeah.
Yes. So the dissociation, that's again when I was talking about fight, flight, or freeze. When
Yes.
people freeze, they're having that dissociation. They're trying to just get through the abuse, imagine they're somewhere else, trying to just maybe they're trying to think of something pleasant while they're going through the abuse. It's that that separation of reality and what you really wish things were. you know I wish I wasn't being abused, or I wish I was in a healthy, loving relationship. So you have that disassociation because you're imagining that good relationship, but you're in the midst of abuse. So you have to disassociate to a degree to get through it.
Yeah, because you're constantly being told you're wrong and overreacting and crazy. So your
Mhm.
brain has to adapt to that,
Yeah,
right?
it has to adapt to what the reality versus your hope.
Yes, yes. So, why do you think these symptoms can often get worse after leaving?
Worse. Okay. I feel like I don't know if they get worse. I don't know that the fog gets worse. I feel like other emotions get worse,
Okay,
like the shame and the guilt.
right,
Um, I feel like that gets worse. And maybe for some people, their fog does get worse because of those negative emotions that come with it. Most people stay because they love the person. So you still have that sense of loss and grief, even though it puts you in a better situation.
right,
um, you still have to grieve it like a death of a loved one. And I think maybe that might make I can see maybe your fault getting worse from that um, grieving standpoint.
right. I
Um,
think a few survivors, not all, but I've seen a
mhm,
few over the years that the hypervigilance, right, can increase
mhm.
that fog for them if they are when they're in that mode of being hyper vigilant about, is he around every corner? Is he following me? Is he stalking me? Is he watching and recording everything I say or do, even though we're apart and I'm having to co-parent with him? Or sometimes I see that it can get worse for some survivors who are locked into that kind of mode when leaving.
And that makes sense. So I'm glad you brought it up. Like I said, I don't think my fall got worse,
Right.
but it didn't improve right away because of those same things. So yes, I can see it's a different version of survival at that point. You might not be in imminent danger at that moment, but like you said, I still have some hypervigilance personally, but when you're trying to escape, I just said this is the most dangerous time for you. So I can't imagine that there's any survivor that doesn't have hypervigilance afterwards. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
again, that's still creating some stress in your body. So yeah, I can definitely see the fog potentially getting worse because the stalking that happens typically, I think people downplay. It's real. He was watching me. He And I got a temporary, well, no, I had a permanent protective order afterwards. But he would message my daughter saying, like, why isn't mom going to work? Like, how do you know I didn't go to work? Like, so it was So I'm still in fight or flight because I know you're watching me. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So thanks for bringing that point up.
No, I've seen a lot over many years now, just on my end, uh, of our groups and things that we have done here. So yeah, but most of the time, a lot of people feel embarrassed about these symptoms, and
Mm.
so they don't want to associate them with the trauma. A lot of times, don't you think?
Yes, I think a lot of people, like I said, the guilt and shame, right?
Hmm.
You are embarrassed. I feel like I felt that somewhat, but I was able to move past it. But again, yeah, you're embarrassed because you stayed with this person, because you quote unquote allowed this to happen to you. You feel, when you were saying, did you feel unintelligent? You could definitely feel like I was stupid to date him, to be with him, to stay with him. Like all of that, all of those emotions flood you at the same time. And embarrassment is definitely a part of it.
Yeah, and in line of what we're talking about, Juanita asked, "Do you think the shame and guilt comes from losing the person you fell in love with?"
Yes. And I think for me, it was definitely, how could I have stayed with him? And when I think about, one of the things I'm most shameful for was, I felt like after our first date, I should have, what kids do now, block and delete. But again, we didn't have
No, we didn't have
we didn't have cell phones. When I think back, several dating instances, several, I'm like, I should have, at that point, I should have never seen him again.
hmm
So yes, the shame and guilt. I mean, I really can't imagine a survivor not having some level of shame and guilt.
Yes, yes. And I know personally too. I knew after a month. I tried to break up with him, but I had ended up pregnant, and so I really thought I was doing my child a service. Like there wasn't abuse there yet, but there were things, there were signals that
Yeah,
were off, that something was wrong,
I agree.
and I
I
ignored that because I didn't wanna have a child that didn't have a father in this world,
that's
and
that's
yeah.
that cultural and societal pressure that
Mhm.
was put onto us, right? Um, two-parent household is mandatory. It's best for the child and things like that. So I get that. Um, and those red flags that we ignore.
Mhm.
It's, I don't know. I don't even know why. Why, like where that came from, ignoring red flags. I just think women, and I'm not saying men aren't abused, but women are caring and want to see the best in people. So even though I suffer from shame and guilt intellectually, I knew it wasn't my fault. I knew, I was fighting to get back to the what was going on in the love bombing phase. Like he was so great. He had it's an off day. He's apologetic. So
He has potential. I
potential.
potential.
Potential. Yes. He's
If I just
intelligent.
loved him enough.
Oh yeah. So those are those wonderful things in our brain that we misuse or misinterpret. And I think a lot of it did have to do with either how you're raised and the society, because, we grew up watching Disney and you just want to grow up and have a happy marriage and a happy family. That's the American ideal. So I get your situation completely.
Oh, yeah.
And
So
you know what?
go ahead.
Now that I'm remembering, I, I ended up marrying him because I got pregnant.
Yeah.
Now we were together though already, but That's that cognitive dissonance. He asked me to marry him. I
Mhm.
said no. That was my gut trying to protect me.
Yeah.
But, he wore me down, suppose, and I did end up marrying him. So I feel if we just pay attention to those red flags and accept them
Mhm.
versus trying to turn them green, which they never will, that that is why I do what I do. As far as talking to people and spreading this message, because I'm big on the trying to help the younger generation
Yes.
to listen to those red flags. Like that's my goal. Just listen to the red flags and move on.
Right. And they have so much more available information wise to them
I
than
agree.
so I'm glad for that for them. But also it makes more things that can be used against them. So it there's a good way about technology and there's bad things.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely pro and con about that.
Yes. So what are some maybe practical steps survivors can take to like regain some of their mental clarity?
I do believe in the screenshots. I do believe in the documenting
Mm.
because when you're in that fog, your self doubt is on 100% and your self confidence is on zero.
Right.
You're questioning your reality. So I do believe documenting things so that you have the proof, even if you're not sharing it with anybody, you have the proof to yourself. Like, I didn't imagine that. That really happened. That really is what was said versus, oh, I didn't say that or I didn't mean I didn't mean it like that. I think that clarity happens when the truth is put in our face. Um, if we don't recognize, if we don't accept what's really happening, the fog will continue. So that mental clarity comes with the truth and acceptance of the truth. When I came out of my fog, I was so hell bent on telling the truth. It was crazy. I say to this day, I will never not speak the truth. And that's something I actually am working on because I know it's a trigger, it's a trauma response being overly vocal. But my voice was silenced so much that I refuse to be silent on anything now. So I'm working on filtering. That's saying some things you don't need to respond to.
Yes.
I am working on that filter because if you tell me the sky is blue, no, gray, no, it's blue and sunny outside. Like my trauma response coming out of that was speaking to everything and making sure everyone realized that's false. This is the truth.
Right. So do you have like practical ways to help your nervous system regulate when you're
Oh,
doing
you can do yes. So again, the regulation is not going to happen if you're still in the abusive relationship. You
right,
have to get to physical and emotional safety.
right.
Therapy. Let's just say that.
Yes.
And you need a trauma informed therapist, someone who specializes in trauma because all therapists don't. Um, I also believe exercising
Mhm.
because we talked about those hormones that were released. Well, exercising releases dopamine. That's the good hormone, the happy hormone.
Yes.
Exercising. So whatever level of exercise is good for you. Walking is great also. I believe in journaling,
Mhm.
you know. I believe what did I say? Oh, someone else mentioned this, like the eating right. That's really important. And I know a lot of people, including myself, we stress eat and we look for comfort food. But a lot of times those foods continue to create stress in our body.
Mhm.
And some, even therapists and psychologists will tell you some foods trigger anxiety. So looking into a healthier diet, what did I say? Exercising, diet, rest.
Yes. It's a big one. Yeah.
We definitely were not well rested
Uh,
within our abuse. Not at all. Rest, breath work,
uh-huh.
meditation,
Yes.
and I said journaling.
Yeah.
And
Our board secretary always gets on and does little daily reminders. Drinking water. She's always on us about drinking lots of
water.
water.
Right. That is a good point. So add that under the healthy eating, getting the right amount of water per day
Yeah.
can clear your mind. Trust me when I say the way we eat and how much water we intake makes a big difference in your mental clarity. Trust me on that. And what was the other thing? I felt like there was another piece. Having a support system, a healthy
Yes.
support system. I feel like when I was coming out of my fog, I was in 1,000 narcissist groups. Like when you get amongst people who have been through what you've been through, and I'm talking about in a positive way. Like sometimes I'm not saying be in a group to continue like staying in your trauma, but knowing that you're not alone and what you went through, to realize like the same exact actions other people experience. I'm like, this is really crazy. I'm
Mhm.
not crazy.
Right. You're not alone in all of
I'm
that.
not alone,
Uh,
so that helps with that clarity.
absolutely. So I know we're getting close to our time here. Let's say, I think my final question would be, what would you say to someone who fears they'll never feel sharp again, like they feel like the fog will never lift for them?
I would say have hope. I would say hold on. I would say continue, in supportive relationships. And those relationships may come from family, but may come from friends.
Mhm.
Um, I would say there are even nowadays there are even brain games, right? To increase your brain's stimulation and get it back engaged. I would say do that. But I also feel like getting the language and the support you need helps with that, because that confusion and that fog thrives in lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, and silence.
Mhm. Yes, we got a lot of comments in here. People were talking about their music helps them, reading
Yes, that's a good one.
books.
I don't
Yeah.
know how I forgot music because so many reading. Yes, I did a lot of reading, self help, self improvement reading. I still do. I did a lot of that. Just that's also, along with therapy, that also gave me the support and language I needed. Oh, that's what that was. This, this really is not something I imagined. It's something that actually can happen, has happened. So having that language was really good. I don't know how I forgot music because I know music, probably because I'm not a big music fan. Not saying I'm not a big music fan, but I could go days without listening to music and it's not a problem. But for a lot of people, music is so grounding, especially, instrumental without words. Of course, there's some songs out there that empower also with their words.
Yes, absolutely. And here's my sweet husband. He's got a
Aw,
question. So, Mr. Jim here.
hi, Jim.
Uh, what you are describing sounds familiar to what
Mm.
occurs to people who've been held captive for long periods of time. What you experience is a direct result of brain attempting to protect itself from massive trauma. How important is it to be able to identify this yourself?
It's very important because remember, you've been questioning your reality because the person's been gaslighting you. So recognizing, when I said about the reading a lot, when I was reading some of the I read books about emotional trauma and
Mhm.
things like that. So reading that empowered me. Like I said, I didn't imagine this. This was reality. This scenario really did happen. So it wasn't me. I'm not the broken person. I'm not the problem person. It helped me to identify, to reinforce who I really am versus what I had been told for 20 odd years. Also, I even though religion kept me in abuse, I still am a Christian, and reading Bible promises about who I am was huge. So affirmation is a big part of it. I get affirmation quotes and stuff sent to my phone now. So a lot of that helps you um, build back your true identity. And I think his question was, how important is it to be able to identify this in yourself? So
Yes.
reading things that actually give you the understanding of what you're going through helps you identify it. What you said, Tara, about the social media for kids, social media helped me. I was in therapy when I decided to leave, but while I was in therapy, I saw a podcast online, and it was talking about narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there like, this sounds real familiar. All of this sounds
Doesn't
really
it?
familiar. And I sat there like, okay. And I took that back to my therapist, like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And so, you know, relating to something that from another viewpoint or another person or outside person, when you get that information and feedback about abusive relationships or unhealthy relationships, that helps you recognize all of this that's happening and the abuse that's happening. It helps you recognize it within yourself. So what you're doing with this podcast is helping free people.
I most certainly hope so. That's why we do it.
Because that's, someone watching this podcast is going to be like, well, wait a minute. I feel like that. And
Yeah.
that helps them to identify what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I agree. Juanita was saying she does journals, and then going back and look at them. That is a good way also to know that your brain fog is lifting,
Mm-hmm.
because you can go back and revisit what you wrote a couple months ago and see the difference in yourself. And
Difference.
that's a good
Right.
way to evaluate yourself as a tool. So,
That
yeah,
is good. Sometimes I think we need to show ourselves more compassion and grace.
yes,
Like, we're quick to give other people grace and compassion, but we need to show that to ourselves. So yes, like Juanita said, looking back, that journaling is crucial. Looking back to where you were to where you are now. Yeah, it's going to help you come out of that fog, and also help empower yourself and realize I am not that same person. I am improving day by day. And I think sometimes we negate our improvement. So having that written proof, again, yes, it's going to give you clarity, because we think maybe we should be so much further along, or maybe you just forgot how much progress you made because it's not something you're constantly thinking about. I'm not sitting here every day complimenting myself like, oh, you did this, but you can. You
right.
like, yesterday I drank my 8 glasses of water. Ooh,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point, Juanita, looking back at your journals.
Yes. It's just trying to empower ourselves to realize that we're not so damaged that we can't heal. There's
Hmm.
healing to be had. And that's the main goal here. So,
And it's not always easy. I think we also need to understand it's not a healing. I don't believe, my opinion is, there's not an end to healing.
that's right.
It's ongoing, and you're going to have great weeks, and then you're going to have weeks where you're triggered and maybe not so great. And again, that's when that grace and compassion for yourself comes in, because healing is also hard work. It's not the best feeling in the world to bring up past situations, but talking about it helps you walk through it. So you have to be prepared for the work, but it's definitely healing on the healing path on the other side of fog.
Yes, absolutely. Is there any last thing that you would want the listeners to know before we go?
If someone is feeling like they're in that fog right now, again, you're not crazy and you're not alone and you're not the only one going through it, because, abusers always use that isolation, right? So you're not alone, you're not crazy. And that confusion is often part of the trauma that you're going through. So when you get that clarity through language and support and safety, healing is possible.
Yes, absolutely. So wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
Absolutely. So if you're listening tonight and you recognize this in yourself in the conversation we've had, just know you're not broken. Your brain can adapt and survive. When you were living in chaos, your mind focused on safety.
Right.
Now, you don't have to walk on eggshells. You can prioritize your brain into a direction and start to have some recall, and the fog will lift.
It
So
will.
your cognitive system was kind of under siege, and now we're moving towards a healthy direction where it's not, right? And
Right.
you're surviving, and survival sometimes is exhausting, but there's
Mhm.
always hope, that we can heal and restore. Your clarity will come back. Your confidence will rebuild.
It
Your memory
will.
will
Hmm.
strengthen, and your instincts will become sharp again. So you're not losing your mind out there. You're coming out of
Wow.
war. This is literally a warfare we experience. I believe that thoroughly. And so the fog lifting definitely will happen, and it's not weakness, it's healing. So before we go tonight, I want to close out that if you need support, our BTSADV support line is here 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Hmm.
That number will be in the comments and in the description. Also, if this episode connected with you, please share it. You never know who is silently struggling with the symptoms we're talking about tonight. Visit our BTS ADV online store on our website. Every purchase
Hmm.
directly supports survivor programs also and keeps this podcast going. We have Survivor to Survivor. It airs every Friday night. If you have a question you'd like answered anonymously by fellow survivor, send them to podcast at breakthesilencedv.org.
Hmm.
Also, our episodes of the Narc Diaries are live over on our TikTok. That is raw, unfiltered, exposing all the things narcissists say that makes us survivors question our sanity. I question my sanity
Hmm.
reading them. My goodness, some of the things. That's over on
Right.
BTSADV7 on TikTok. And also, our podcast does have some sponsorship and affiliates open. So if your business wants to stand with survivors, reach out to us at the podcast email. We thank you for being here and at this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. We wanted to pause for a moment and let you know that Through the Eyes of Survivors has a shop now open. And this is a great way for you to not only help survivors of domestic violence, but also let everyone know that you will not be silent about this important cause. From t-shirts to bags to coffee mugs, we have so much to choose from. To grab your swag, head to our store at breakthesilencedv.org. That's store.breakthesilencedv.org. We can't say enough about how much we appreciate all that the community does to help support us and this organization. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode and continue to subscribe to future episodes. Thank you.